Hello friends, welcome back to another episode of our I Do Work Here Lady, where it's not about people mistaking customers as employees, but mistaking actual employees as regular Joe Schmoes. In this episode, you'll hear about an employee who's mistaken as a resident and gets their car towed, a registered nurse being mistaken as a plumber, a professor who looks like a freshman, and we'll finish off with a wholesome story for you. I hope you stay for all the stories today and subscribe for future videos. This story is titled, I Can Park Here. I work for a company whose offices are located in 3 adjacent residential apartments. We installed 2 doors in between to make one big, sprawling office. There isn't much parking because it's a residential area, so employees are allowed to park in the no parking sign area. This keeps our neighbors happy that we don't use all the available spots, and maintenance can ask us to move if they need to get into one of the areas. The first 2 apartment doors have signs directing customers. The 3rd door is not marked because it houses the corporate officers who don't deal with customers. I work in that 3rd office. We also have an extremely casual dress code. I'm getting out of my car one morning and collecting my soda, lunch, and other items when I hear a voice behind me saying, "You can't park there." I turn around to see a man leaning against the outside wall, smoking and playing with his phone. I thought maybe he was a third-party vendor waiting for maintenance to unlock the door I was blocking. I said, "Is maintenance on its way to let you in?" The man replied, "What are you talking about? The sign clearly says no parking. You can't park there." I figured he was a new tenant in the building and continued walking into the building. I told him, "I'm allowed to park there. I work in the building and it leaves more open spaces for residents." Then I said, "Have a nice day." The man steps in front of me and says, "Move your car or you will be towed." I said, "Excuse me, I work here and I'm allowed to park there. Please move out of my way." The man mumbles something along the lines of, "We'll see about that," but I shrug it off. He marches through the door ahead of me and starts walking to the offices. I follow him up the hallway, but, at the 3rd door, unlock it and walk into my office area. After lunch, the general manager came in and grabbed my keys to move my car. This happens all the time, so I didn't give it a second thought. That afternoon, the general manager brings the new employee into my office to introduce him to me. I am the financial controller and part of the HR management team. I stand up and hold out my hand to the man, whose face is completely drained of color. He stammers out, "Nice to meet you," and hands me all of his new hire paperwork. I ask him to sit down, and the general manager leaves him with me to get him set up on the system and explain his privileges. The man says, "Excuse me, I need to step out for a moment to the restroom." I pointed him to the nearest restroom and said, "There's one right there." He then responded, "I need to step outside." The general manager comes back into my office and sits down with a big smile. I said, "I think he's a little embarrassed. He yelled at me for parking in the no parking spots this morning." The general manager said to me, "Yeah, it's a little more than that. He came in an hour before we scheduled him this morning and blustered to the receptionist about you for half an hour before I went out and got him started filling out paperwork just to shut him up." I explained the no parking policy to him in orientation and explained our towing procedures. I caught him at the break saying that he wouldn't tolerate illegal parking and would get this place in line now that he was here. We happened to walk by the parking stickers as we were showing him around. Sure enough, he took the bait and swiped one. I called the towing company and warned them that he might call and to just play along but not to send anyone. As soon as he tagged your car, I moved it into an empty garage. About this time, the man comes back in looking like he saw a ghost. He said, "Ma'am, I don't know how to tell you this, but I had your car towed. I'm so sorry. I'll pay for the charges and I'll go get it right now." The general manager said, "What do you mean? Who gave you the number for the towing company?" The man responded, "I got it off the parking stickers in the closet. Who told you to sticker cars? This isn't even your area." The man, who seriously looked like he was going to melt into the floor, said, "I'm so sorry. I thought she lied about working here so she could park. She went into the apartment, not the office, and she wasn't in dress clothes. I don't know. I thought I could catch the truck before it came, but her car's gone. I was having a hard time keeping a straight face through this, and probably looked mad due to the strain of not laughing." The general manager said, "Well, maybe that'll teach you not to assume how things should be run. You were running your mouth all day about the things you were going to change, and you didn't listen when I explained our parking and towing policies. Now, I'm going to go get her car out of the garage, and you're going to get set up on the system. Maybe tomorrow you'll come in with a better attitude." He looked relieved and also miserable to be chastised on his first day. I got him set up, no hard feelings, and even had him laughing by the end. He showed up the next day with a soda for me and a much better attitude. That's a pretty bold thing to do on your first day of work. That general manager seems like a pretty cool guy, and good on them for having a good sense of humor. I hope he fit in at that workplace. This story is titled, Are You Like a Medical Person? I am a charge nurse in a medical unit. I am a 32-year-old man with a tidy ginger beard. I wear a striped gray and white tunic. The registered nurses wear a white tunic, and the student nurses wear a white tunic that has the name of the college they attend in big letters. All of us carry identification and lanyards that have our job titles on them. I'm walking around the unit checking to see if everyone's okay and nobody's drowning in their patient caseload. The student nurse and registered nurse are looking after patient X, who had come in with delirium due to a urinary tract infection. She had been convinced that there were intruders in her attic and had fallen trying to climb up to confront them. I see the patient's son, an angry man, accosting the student nurse with some forms in his hand, repeating, "Just sign them, just sign them." The registered nurse tells me that he's been asking everyone to sign these forms to get his mother sectioned under the Mental Health Act. I decide to rescue the student nurse, who's on her first ever hospital rotation and is obviously very uncomfortable. I said, "Hi sir, you're interested in getting your mother sectioned?" Well, that's a psychiatrist or gerontologist's decision, so none of the nurses here are going to be able to sign that for you. If you want, I can point you in the direction of the medical secretaries who can arrange an appointment for you. The man said, "Well, if they can't sign this, what about these instead?" He brandished forms for long-term nursing home facilities. I responded, "Okay, so your mother would have to consent to long-term care unless she's deemed to not have the capacity to make decisions for herself. Again, this is a decision for the gerontologist or psychiatrist, so I can show you the way to the secretaries." The angry man then said loudly, so the staff could hear, "Well, at least someone knows what they're talking about here. The nurses here are useless, and it took this guy to tell me what I need to know." He turns to me and says, "So, are you like a medical person?" Pointing to my various forms of identification, I said, "Yeah, actually, I'm the nurse in charge of this unit, and I don't appreciate your comments about my staff, especially since you were browbeating a student nurse when I first saw you. It's probably best if you stopped raising your voice and went to speak to the secretaries." He apologized profusely and began to walk away, but I just needed to know. I said, "Just out of curiosity, who did you think I was when I first started talking to you?" He responded, "I don't know, like a plumber or something?" Cue the laughter from the registered nurse and student nurse. It's turned into a running joke that when there's a complaint or an issue, the nurses in the unit tell me, "We need the plumber in room 2. How the heck do you confuse a registered nurse for a plumber? He had all of his identification showing. Some people. This story is titled, But I Was Supposed to Meet the Professor Here. One time on my commute to grad school, I found a phone on the side of the road. I flipped through it to text whoever's mom that the phone had been found. She gave her thanks, and we arranged a time for her to pick it up on behalf of her teenage daughter. The best time for us both was when I was instructing a lab, and I told her to just ask for the instructor when she arrived in the classroom. I'm a 5'1" blonde who had been asked a couple of times throughout grad school if I was a freshman, so I shouldn't have been surprised when the lady stepped into the classroom while I was helping a student at their desk. She wandered around briefly without talking to anyone, then laughed while mumbling, "Huh, well, I was supposed to meet a professor here." I had to go chase her down in the parking lot after one of my students, who overheard the lady's exasperation, flagged me down. This story is titled, How Do You Like the School? This happened in the fall. I was sitting on the stage of my school, which happens to be in a gym, watching the high school basketball team practice. The middle school team was just leaving, and I was saying goodbye to everyone when the mom of a 14-year-old came up to me and started talking because I was talking to her daughter. She asked if I was new, to which I nodded, and I didn't get another chance to speak before she was talking again. She told me about how she just finished her last chemo and how freeing it was, talking about her short hair and how she couldn't wait for it to reach the same length as mine, which was just above my shoulders. The high school coaches called the kids over to talk about the game plan for the following day, and she asked what grade I'm in. Cue the laughter from the students who were around us. That's the point I informed her that I'm a teacher. I teach high school English, which includes her freshman daughter. It was funny and we both laughed. She's a nice woman, and I've had several other positive chats with her. It just seemed funny and appropriate to post here. It's very rare to find a wholesome story like this one, in the midst of all the angry posts out there. This story is titled, New Executive Assistant Doesn't Realize That I'm One of the Founders. Here's a story from a while back. I don't remember everything, but I'll try my best to recount it. About 10 years ago, my friends and I began our own startup. I was the CMO at the time. Within 2 years, we had over 100 employees and were still growing. Between me, the CEO, the CTO, and the COO, there were 2 executive assistants helping us. However, they were getting overworked and pulling 12 or more hour days because of us, so we decided to hire 2 more assistants so that each of us would have one. One of the new executive assistants was assigned to the CEO. We'll call her Karen. How wonderful. For some reason, Karen thought she was in charge of the other executive assistants because she was under the CEO. Technically, they were all peers, but Karen assumed she had seniority. Within a week, she was bossing all of the assistants around and making them do her work. I was out of town at the time, but my assistant, a lady who had been with us the longest, let me know what was going on. I had just come back from a week at a conference and I was meaning to take that Monday off, but we had a meeting that Monday with our investors and I couldn't miss it. I showed up at the office around 8:30 in the morning, coming in from the gym. I greeted a few people, went over to my desk, dropped off my bags, and then changed. As I headed to the bathroom, Karen came around the corner. There is one thing you need to know about me. I have a baby face, so I look at least 10 years younger than I really am. I was in my early 30s at the time, but I looked like I could have graduated university that year. Karen asked, "Can I help you?" I said, "Hi, you must be Karen. She interrupted me and said, "Yes, I am. And you are?" "Well, I'm Op," I responded. Karen replied, "You are OP? Don't be ridiculous, kid. You're barely old enough to rent a car. Stop joking and tell me what you're doing here before I call security." I responded, "Karen, I'm OP, the CMO." Karen said, "I know who the CMO is, and he's not you. He's a personal friend of mine, and I've known the entire founding team for quite some time, so you can't lie to me. Show me your ID." My ID was back at my desk, and I said, "Fine, follow me." As we headed over to my desk, I reached for my wallet, and Karen snatched it before I could even open it, exclaiming that I shouldn't be grabbing things from the CMO's desk. Just then, the CEO walked in, and Karen said, "CEO, you won't believe what just happened. I caught this crazy person pretending to be the CMO and stealing from his desk." The CEO looked over at me, and I just gave him the, "Yeah, this is happening" look. He said, "Can you tell me exactly what happened?" Karen went on a long rant about how I broke in here and was looking around the desks for something to take when she finally caught me trying to take a wallet. The CEO asked Karen to check to make sure there was nothing missing from the CMO's or my wallet. She opened it up, and on the front was my driver's license. I could see her pupils scanning my ID and her eyes getting wider and wider, and then her mouth dropped. I then said, "So, can I have my wallet back now, Karen?" Karen nearly had a heart attack and was basically too flustered to say anything. The CEO dismissed her and cracked a few jokes to ease the situation. We broke into a huge laugh and chatted a bit about Karen. It turned out everyone had been complaining about her. At first he was just going to reprimand her and tell her she needed to change, but after the debacle that morning he wanted to let her go. I felt kind of bad, and I didn't want her fired because of me. I didn't want to be known as that person. We ended up letting her stay for another week. She avoided me like the plague, but kept making everyone else's lives miserable. We let her go that Friday, however. As they say, she did not go quietly into that good night. After the CEO gave her the bad news, she was angry and came straight to me. She basically tapped me on the shoulders while I had my headphones on and started screaming at me about how it was an honest mistake, what happened between us, and how the place would fall apart without her around. The Karen's scream was long and fierce, but around 2 minutes I had had enough. I said, "Karen, that's enough out of you. Regardless of what you think, your departure from this company was not my doing, but it was the icing on the cake. The whole office has come into conflict with you in the past, and you've been bossing way too many people around when you have no authority over them. The other assistants do not report to you, and I've heard nothing but complaints about you in the past 2 weeks you've been here. Now, you can either walk out of here peacefully, or I can get security to do it." Karen was bright red at this point, and the entire office stopped work to listen. My assistant came over with Karen's purse and her belongings and then shoved them into Karen's arms. As Karen walked out, she yelled back that we'd be hearing from her lawyer. We didn't hear anything. It's really unfortunate that some people act like this. And the way that Karen was being a Karen and also assuming that the person whom she didn't know couldn't have been one of the founders of the company. Be careful when talking to people. You don't know what a satisfying story. This story is titled, "Yep, I'm Your New Boss." I was assigned as a project manager for the installation of a whole audio-visual solution for an entire office complex, not the whole building, but like 2 or 3 floors. The building was already made, but it was in its bare bones, just floors, ceiling, and elevators. A big pharma company bought 3 floors of this building and decided to make these their new offices. I was assigned as part of an engineers committee, very scared, as this was my first time leading a project with them, and I was also 21 years old. This story is from my first meeting with the committee at the building itself, like an introduction to the staff and to my future techs and construction workers team. I got to the building in my work clothes, safety boots, hard hat, and my bag with my tools. I showed my company's badge and was allowed to get in. I got to the floor where the meeting was being held, and the foreman of the construction company received me very harshly in front of everyone. He said, "Who the heck are you? Are you the new guy? You're late. Work here starts at 6 in the morning." I replied, "Sorry, I was appointed to a meeting with the lead architect at 10 in the morning. I'm not one of your workers. I'm here for a meeting and blueprints revision." He responded, "Don't mess with me, kiddo." I replied, "Let me call the lead architect to see what's going on." I got on the phone with her and she came, angry, to the lobby. The lead architect came in and said, "What the heck is going on?" She turned to me and said, "Sorry for the harsh reception, man. Please come in, we've been waiting for you." So, basically, I, the project manager, was his boss now, and he had to do whatever I wanted on my time schedule. Revenge is so sweet, and the hypocrisy of this man when we worked together was incredible. I had to work about 14 hours daily, and guess who else had to work with me? I indeed work here, man. I'm your temporary boss. The foreman in this story could have come across a bit nicer when asking whether or not the new guy was working with him, and in the end, a pretty sweet revenge came out of it. I hope the project manager went easy on him because I don't think I would. This one is titled, "I Worked There, Please Don't Arrest Me." Some time ago, probably around 2010, I worked for a pizza franchise. There was a manager on vacation at a location I didn't work at, so I was asked to fill in for them on my regular days off. The franchisee found out that I'd be working at that store and asked me on the second day that I was there to do a full audit of the store because she was suspicious that people were giving her incorrect numbers. So, because this audit took a while, I was leaving the pizza place at 2 in the morning. Another important detail is that I didn't have a key to the front of the place, only to the back, so I parked behind the store, locked the back door, and started to drive off. When I got to the exit of the parking lot, there was a sheriff's car going 3 to 5 miles per hour in the right turn lane that turned into the place that I was working. He was going so slow that I had enough time to consider pulling in front of him several times, but I decided to just sit there and thought maybe he's on his computer, and as soon as I pull out, he'll zip to full speed. This sheriff's car turned right into the parking lot that I was pulling out of. I pulled out and saw the sheriff's car turn around in the parking lot and get right behind me. He turned on his red and blue lights right as we were getting to a McDonald's, and I was like, "Oh no, why?" I pulled into McDonald's and went into the first available parking space, turned my dome light on, rolled down the window, literally rolling down the window because my car didn't have power windows, and he came up to me asking, "What were you doing in that parking lot?" I pointed to the pizza company logo on my shirt, and after explaining to him and showing proof and the keys to the place, the guy was a little nicer and said, "Oh, people have been robbing businesses in this strip mall, sorry to do that." I thanked him for considering our safety and then went on my way. This is a great story and an honest mistake with no harm done. The sheriff was only doing his job, and honestly, being behind a store with no one around is pretty suspicious. I'm glad OP got out of there safe and sound, and that the officer turned out to be a pretty nice guy. This is what I think about these story. Story 1. I can park here. The new employee's bold assumptions about parking rules led to an embarrassing lesson. The general manager's clever setup with the fake towing was a brilliant way to teach humility. I love how the situation was resolved with humor, and the employee's soda gesture the next day showed growth. A satisfying story of overconfidence meeting reality. Story 2. Are you like a medical person? The son's rudeness and mistaking the charge nurse for a plumber was both hilarious and frustrating. The nurse handled it professionally, protecting his team while setting boundaries. It's a great reminder not to judge by appearances, especially when the plumber is running the show. The running joke in the unit is a nice touch. Story 3. But I was supposed to meet the professor here. This is a light-hearted mix-up with the grad student being mistaken for a freshman. The narrator's quick action to chase down the mom shows kindness, and the story's simplicity makes it relatable. It's a wholesome moment that highlights how youthful looks can lead to funny misunderstandings. Story 4. How do you like the school? A heartwarming and funny case of mistaken identity. The mom's assumption that the teacher was a student is understandable given the casual setting, and the laughter shared afterward made it a feel-good moment. It's rare to see such a positive human interaction in these stories. Refreshing. Story 5. New executive assistant doesn't realize that I'm one of the founders. Karen's arrogance and refusal to listen made her downfall satisfying. The CMO's patience was admirable, though her continued bad behavior sealed her fate. It's a classic case of ego outpacing competence, and the office's collective relief at her exit was palpable. A great lesson in not assuming authority. Story 6. Yep, I'm your new boss. The foreman's harsh attitude backfired spectacularly when the young project manager turned out to be his boss. The revenge of long work hours felt justified, though I hope the PM showed some mercy. This story is a perfect example of why you shouldn't underestimate someone based on age or appearance. Story 7. I worked there, please don't arrest me. A tense but harmless misunderstanding. The sheriff was just doing his job, and the narrator's calm explanation resolved it quickly. It's a relatable story about how looking suspicious in the wrong place at the wrong time can lead to a heart-pounding moment, but cooler heads prevailed. I hope you guys enjoyed the stories in this episode. If you aren't subscribed, hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications for future videos. If you didn't like my opinions, or if you liked my opinions, please let me know in the comments below what you thought of these stories, and I'll see you guys in the next one.